And there it is. That's live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's pre-show. We got about 10 minutes, actually 9.5 minutes before we get started on our live stream today. Thanks for joining us. Hope everybody is doing well. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Hope everybody is settling in. We have all new questions, of course, for you in this first hour, and I will be taking your questions in the second hour from the URL that I have on the screen right there. Be good if I put it up. You can also use that URL to answer today's question of the day. Really the question we do just before every study group. Where are you joining from? Some folks have already put their digital pins in our digital pin cushion, our map of the world. Some folks are up here, looks like in Hamilton. We got some folks in Ohio, maybe, Indiana, somewhere in there. Folks are showing up. Thanks for being here, everybody. We always have such a good time on these live streams. It's always a lot of fun. We like to chat in this first pre-show. This is really my opportunity to check all of my cameras, which appear to be working. I did a operating system update over the last 2 weeks since I saw all of you last, and it still works. I'm going to knock on something real quick. Everything seems to be working. We're all doing okay. We're all doing what we would expect to do. So thank you for being here. I'm doing all kinds of different configurations with my audio and video. There's always something changing here. I can never leave well enough alone. So that's why this is where we are. And this is our first study group since the English language 1101 and 1102 were retired, right? So this is, for a lot of us on this live stream, we'll be talking about the only available A+, although that's not necessarily true for some of you who might be bilingual. You might have an extra few months here that you could take exams. So we'll talk about that during the live stream just a little bit. The next Security Plus study group is 2 weeks from Wednesday. It's on the calendar. It's the 22nd of October is when the next Security Plus study group is. You can always find out when the next study group is going to be by going to our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, professormesser.com/events, or you can go to the events channel that is in our Discord. I always keep all of those dates up to date so you know exactly what's going to happen because things might change. Now, October is pretty normal. Next month is a little bit crazy. You'll see at the end of this live stream when I talk about when the next events will be. My November is just really weird. It's just odd. So we'll have to see if it works out. I think I'm doing 3 live streams in 1 week in November, which normally not something we do. Does anyone require a degree to break into cybersecurity industry? That's a good question. And I think you should put that in the Q&A that we have ready to go for our second hour. I will be taking your questions at that time, and I would love to answer that question. If you go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, there's a tab at the top, and you can flip over to the questions and the answers, and you can submit a question into that list of things. I think that's in pretty good shape. I think that's the way it works. So everything is in a browser. Go to professormesser.com/QA. I know there is a Vevox app. We use Vevox as the Q&A system that we are using. But for the app simply redirects you back to the web. So you might as well just open up a browser and go to professormesser.com/QA because you're going to end up there anyway. So that's just a little tip, just a little time-saving tip, just a little bit. And we could all save a little bit of time. We'll make this happen. So let's see. For someone who's looking to go into IT from finance, has 0 experience, should I start here for the absolute basics? A+ is generally the starting point for most people in the world of information technology. And in fact, everything in A+, everything else in IT kind of builds on the things that you learn in A+. Operating systems, hardware, what is this cable, a little bit of security, a little bit of networking. There's a little bit of cloud in there, even a little bit of AI. So you get a smattering. There's a lot of operating system, a lot of Windows in it. So you're effectively learning all those building blocks that everything else is stacked upon. So it is a very good certification for starting out. It is considered to be the introductory cert into the industry. To do that, Rupert in the chat room says, I am A+ certified. Finally, Congratulations, Rupert, on your new A+ certification. That's fantastic news. So good. I love it. Rigby says, thank you so much, Professor Messer, for helping me pass. I didn't help you pass. You helped you pass. I gave you some tools. You were able to use the tools. You did the hard work, as I like to say. I just made some videos for you. And course notes and practice exams and live streams and other things. Make that happen. Hello, Edmonton, Canada. I got kin in Edmonton. So that is a part of Canada. I am very happy to talk to someone from. It's always nice to have a connection, right? And I guess it's getting cold now, isn't it? Isn't it cooling down up there? Of course, during the winters, we always hear the great stories. It is, you guys are tough. I could not handle it. Now, we are based in Central Florida. So cold for us means that we have to find our windbreaker. We have to put on socks. That's our winter. So I hear about the stories. Now, I am going up into a frozen part of the world here in a couple of weeks. It's going to be cool. So I do have to bring my leather jacket with me. We have jackets in our closets. We just don't wear them unless we go somewhere where we need them. So that's sort of how it is. Makes that happen. Let's see if I can. Gorilla says, didn't need to, but I bought your stuff for $50. It's my way to get back to the free class. Well, either way, I could not appreciate it more. Thank you, Gorilla X, for that. Having that type of support from folks really is very motivating to me. It is not taken lightly at all. So thank you for that. Folks are checking in from all over. We got folks checking in from Colorado Springs. I think I missed one above that. I'm scroll. Ghana is here. We've got England, UK. We've got folks, as I mentioned, from Edmonton. Thanks for being here again. Hello again. Here's some Florida people. The Jamaican man. Hello from Florida. And hello from Florida from here. Got Arizona, Los Angeles. We don't really say that anymore, do we? That was sort of was that a 50s, 60s thing? I think it was. Egypt is here. So we got a lot happening. Thank you all for being here. We have such fun on these live streams, too. We got Q&A coming up in just a few minutes. We already hit our 5-minute warning. Make that happen. Latvia, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We got Georgia in the U.S. The used to be part of my territory. I have to be up there quite a bit. Nigeria is here. Nolans is here. Texas, Toronto, Wichita, California, Phoenix, New Jersey is here. There's Miami. Lived in Miami for 10 years. Kind of miss that down there. We do go back every so often. It's kind of nice. We got a minute and a half to go before we get started. Get these things going. A lot of very busy lately. There's I know we're going into sort of a holiday season-ish part of the year. This last quarter of the year always tends to be a little more casual, a little slower, but I don't see a lot of slower. I don't see a lot happening there. There's just a lot happening, but we're always doing something. It's always fun. Okay, we got other folks that are checking in. We got a minute and 7 seconds before we get there. Make that happen. Could I explain the Success Bundle? Well, I will be talking about the Success Bundle here in this first part of the live stream. I break it down pretty well for you. Oh, okay. I think I am ready to go. I should probably center myself on my camera. It's always a challenge. We'll make that happen. We got this here, that, checking other things. Vouchers for EU. Sadly, no. I don't have any vouchers for Europe. We'll talk about that as well in the voucher section, but it's only for the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory. So if you're in Guam, if you're in Puerto Rico, if you are in the Mariana Islands, I got you. But if you are not, I don't have any vouchers for you right now. So sad. I'm so sorry. Perhaps eventually we'll be able to make that happen. It's always a challenge. International finance. Well, I should get the finance person involved who's looking to get it as A+. Help me out with getting all the financial stuff straightened out. Okay, I'm going to make it slightly cooler. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I've just now that we're ready to start, I have come to the stark realization that I would like to be just a little bit cooler with all the lights on, even though it's LEDs. LEDs are still bright. It is top of the hour. Let's go to our keynote. Let's start and look for a green light. I haven't tested the green light since I updated. Oh, it works. And look at all that happen. Let's do a live stream, everybody. What do you think? I think that'd be a great idea. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2025 Professor Messer 220-1201. That is the Core 1 of the A+ exam and the Core 1 A+ study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you get to tell me what you think the answers might be. These are questions you haven't seen before because I write them specifically for this event. If you are here live and you would like to follow along as we go through this Q&A, you are welcome to join us. You browse to this URL, pop open a new window, and browse over to professormesser.com/QA. There is an app for this, and I do put it in here, the Vevox app, but in reality, it just takes you back to the website. I really should just delete that because everybody ends up going to that same URL anyway. Just a quick way to do it. Now, if you do make your way over to that URL, there will be a question waiting for you. That question is one we call our rewind question because it is the only question that we will do today that you have seen before. It's a question from a previous study group that I like to put in here so that we can see if we know the answer and if we're able to get in and answer the questions properly, we're able to submit our answer. The way that you would do this is I will give you the question and the answers, but you do not put the answers in the chat room, please. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. To be able to answer this question, we are going to go to the URL that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. And the question we have for you is, a company has a project to implement VDI. Which the following would be most associated with this project? Would it be Windows desktop backups, laser printer configuration, Bluetooth connectivity, HDMI connection, or RAID support? Now, again, if you think you know the answer, go to the URL right here. I guess I should put it up. Not that one. Nope. There it is. professormesser.com/QA. Can you tell we've been off for 2 weeks? Yes, you can. So every once in a while, we find our ground, we figure out where we are, and we've done it, everybody. Head over to that URL, professormesser.com/QA. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Want to thank all of you for being here. We have so much going on right now. There's a lot of new things that we're doing on this side, a lot of activity. You don't even see it yet, but you will, trust me. And we have a lot of things to talk about A+ in this live stream. We will talk about it, but when we are not doing a live stream, you can always find us over at professormesser.com/YouTube, where we have our entire A+ training course absolutely free. There's nothing behind a paywall. You get every minute of every video. We also have daily A+ pop quiz questions. You can find them on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. You simply put in professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn, those types of places. That's a great place to go to find us. And we also have 24/7 live chat. A lot of people always in the chat in our Discord server at professormesser.com/Discord. I also want you to know that sometime in this first hour, I will endeavor to give you information on how you can earn a 1-hour CEU of this particular event. That's a continuing education unit. It is used for renewals of certifications. If you don't have your certification yet, this won't apply to you. But some of you watching, you're already certified, or perhaps you have other certifications where you can use this event to earn continuing education unit credits and apply those towards the renewal for that certification. I'll talk about this sometime in the first hour, so keep your ears open. I'll let you know when we get to that point and give you the instructions on how you can earn that email that gives you the CEU. Well, for the first time in 6 months or so, we only have one English language A+ exam series for A+ available. That's right. On September 25th, we retired the 220-1101 and 220-1102, which means for English language people, those of you who are taking your A+, you will be taking the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. You might also see this referred to as version 15 of the exam. This is one that was released on March 25th of this year, which means it will retire somewhere around September of 2028. We also have an exam, 90 minutes per exam. That's both of these exams are 90 minutes in length. The 220-1201, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And on the 1202, you need to earn a 700. Do a little bit better on that one on that same scale. One of the things about this, of course, is if you have already been studying for the 1101 and you passed one of those exams, it's too late now to take the other exam. You now have to start over and take both of these exams again. The only thing that might help you is if you are bilingual, because the A+ exams for the 220, 1101, and 1102 are still available for non-English languages until December. So this is one that will help quite a bit if you are in the world of dealing with taking one, passing one, and then you didn't get a chance to pass the second one, but you know Spanish, but you know Thai, but you know Japanese. You can still take the second exam, even though it's in a different language than the exam you took the first one in, and you would still be A+ certified. So for those of you that have that particular scenario, that is a very specific corner case, I realize, that would allow you to make that happen. So at least we have that going for us. We also want to talk to you about those videos I mentioned. One of the things that you will find is if you go to our YouTube channel and you wait until probably about 24 hours after we're done today, because we record this right now, we're recording it live on October. It's live right now, and we are putting a recording on YouTube on October the 7th. We've got this study group information. We'll put timestamps in. It's my marketing manager, Lori, who's doing it. Hey, Lori, she's watching this replay and going through it. She will be glad to put those in so that you can find all of this information that you need. It's on our YouTube video description. You can find it on our YouTube channel, and it's added about a day after we're done. Thank you, Lori, so much for adding that information. We are also available on our Discord. Once we're done here, you'll find me over there, professormesser.com/Discord. The Discord links that we have, there's people always in there studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security+. There's a lot going on there. So another thing that I will mention to you, or I guess the last thing I'll mention to you, is eventually you will need to take your exam. And we can certainly encourage you to go out and purchase a voucher on the CompTIA website, but you'd be paying full price. Instead, if you're in the US, Canada, or US territory, come on over to our website where the vouchers are already discounted. You can save quite a bit of money by going to professormesser.com/vouchers and buy your CompTIA voucher there. And if you buy your voucher on our site, I'll even give you something that you can't get anywhere else. It's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This gives you tips and tricks that you can use for the study and tips and tricks that you can use during the exam itself to perhaps get you a few extra points. That's all included for free when you purchase a discounted voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. So here's the question we were looking at earlier, which asked, a company has a project to implement VDI. Which of the following would be most associated with this project? Would it be Windows desktop backups, laser printer configuration, Bluetooth connectivity, HDMI connection, or RAID support? Let's see what you chose for this one. You did really well last month. You did really well this month too, because 74% of you say Windows desktop backups, 18% say HDMI connection, and then we have single digits, RAID support at 6%, Bluetooth connectivity and laser printer configuration at 1%. Desktop backups is the right answer. That's the one we were looking for, and that's the one we did last month. As I mentioned, this is our rewind question. You did really well last month, and you did really well again with VDI. VDI, of course, stands for the Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. This is when you effectively are running everybody's desktop as a remote desktop. The desktop itself is somewhere in the cloud. And we have no idea where that might be exactly unless you're running your own personal VDI cloud. But if you're running desktop as a service, you'll sometimes hear this called, you just need a basic system that's able to do that remote desktop, and all the real power is out there on the cloud services. That is VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. It looks a little something like this. It looks like Windows, because it is Windows. It's a full-blown operating system. It's just one that's running remotely in the cloud as VDI, as a virtual desktop infrastructure. And as you can see here, 74% of you knew that. You got it absolutely correct. Well, now let's do some new questions. That's what you're here for, isn't it? Let's do some new stuff. And our next question is not a multiple choice question. Our next question is a question that CompTIA likes to call a performance-based question, a PBQ. A performance-based question is one that is anything but multiple choice. So it could be a fill in the blank. It could be a matching question. It could be one where we're putting things in a particular order. Maybe it's a drag and drop question. Maybe they put you in a command line and ask you to perform a function. Maybe they put you on a Windows desktop and tell you to solve a problem. They could really ask any type of question in any style. That's what a performance-based question is. So I have for you today a performance-based question. This one is probably going to be a little bit more focused on folks who are not listening on the podcast side because the podcast is audio only. This is a video type question, so you have to be able to see this question to, as the instructions say, identify the cable. That's all we want you to do is identify these cables. And I have on the screen 8 different cables, and they are fill in the blank. I made this one kind of hard. So you don't have a match that you could choose from on this one. You need to know what these cables are and be able to pick them out and give a name to them. So you have on the screen A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. And I want you to tell me, what are those cables? If you wanted to even do a little bit more with these cables, one of the things that you could do is even, at least to yourself, describe how that cable would be used. When would you need that cable? Somebody says, I need cable C. Well, why do they need that cable? What do you do with that cable? Where do you often see that cable being used? Those are the questions that will really be asked of you on the A+ exam. So it might be useful for you to go through and answer some of these. So if you know the answers, go to our list, go to professormesser.com/QA on this site, and you will be able to fill those things in. On the chat room, some people are saying, I'm glad they have old cables in here. They don't have old cables in here. If you go into any data center in the world right now, on this day, all 8 of those cables will be in there. So this is why you are not just learning about the newest technology that only came out the last 9 months. You are, of course, learning about the new technology, and you're learning about technologies that would normally be found in a traditional data center. A lot of people will even tell me sometimes, oh, the information on the A+ is out of date. And I'll ask, okay, give me one of those objectives that you feel is out of date. And normally people can't give me any. The exam is very good at really picking out the things that you will run into on a day-to-day basis. And these are things that are very, very useful to know. So is it something you might not have at home? Yeah, you probably don't have some of these at home. You probably don't have, let's see, one, maybe 2 of these. Maybe 2 of these you could not find at home. Just not something you'd see. But this is not an exam about working on your home computer. This is an exam about working on enterprise computers, on large organization computers in the big data center. So, of course, there are things that we will need to know here that are a little bit different than what you might find at home. So we will absolutely make that happen. So let's see if we know this one. If you think you know what it is, you can identify that cable by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Now, some people are saying, well, what if you know that cable to be in 2 different names? It's a study group. I'm not going to ding you. I'm not going to take any points away for doing something, for giving me a name that is the same as another name. We use the terms interchangeably. You should be able to use the terms interchangeably. And on your exam, you will not be put in a position where you might call it one type of cable and they were really looking for you to call it a different type of cable. That's not an issue. So I'm giving you a lot of open green space on this one. It's really a fill in the blank. So fill in that blank. And I think if you get it right, you get it right. Whether you call it A or you call it B, it's the same name and we agree that's the same name. I'm fine with that. Not a problem. There is a schedule for these live streams. Folks are asking in the chat room. You can find it at professormesser.com/calendar or in the events channel of our Discord. We always have a calendar. There's always something I'm putting on the calendar. We'll talk about the calendar. As I mentioned in the pre-show, we'll talk about the calendar, especially for November, because it's a little bit crazy. November, when you get into the holiday season, the scheduling is a little bit crazy. So that's sort of how things go with that. Now, to keep things moving here, I'm going to move through this. I see a number of you have submitted your answers already. So I'm going to continue with this. Let's step through each one of these cables and let's figure out every possible name we can find for these cables. We'll see how we do. I think there's a few of these I have multiple names for. So let's do this. Let's go through each cable. We will start with cable A, this cable that we have here. I would bet the person who said, oh, these are old cables, they're probably looking at this cable because, to be fair, this cable's been around for over 50 years, 50 years. It was created in the 60s, but we're still using it. We still see it in our data centers. It's still part of the equipment we use. We are phasing it out slowly, but like most things in a data center, some of these things just never go away, it seems. So cable A is what we were looking at, and I was hoping you would call that a DB9 cable. DB9 is referring to not only the 9 pins that are in the end of that cable, but it's also referring to the D sub B miniature. The D is describing the shape of the end of that cable. It looks like a D. If you look at it, well, you have to squint a little bit. Squint a little bit and it looks like a D. The B refers to the size of the cable. Technically, here's a little secret. Technically, this is not a DB9 cable. We just call it that. It's actually a DE, as in echo, DE9 cable. This is size E. The B is the larger one with 25 pins. But because the 25-pin cable was the one that was most commonly used, when we came out with these 9-pin cables, we realized, oh, this is this particular cable. It has 9 pins. The other one was a DB25, so this must be DB9. So we didn't really change the name. But you will see it sold online in Amazon and other places as both DB9 and DE9, both exactly the same cable. Can't go wrong with that one. Next, DB9 also, people sometimes refer to this as a serial cable. Sometimes people refer to this as a console cable. Sometimes people refer to this as a modem cable. There's already 4 names for this one. I'll accept any of them. I think all of those are legitimate. Next on our list is cable B. Cable B should be very familiar to most of you since we see this one a lot with consumer electronics. That is an HDMI cable commonly used to send video signals from one device to another. Can also send audio across those links. So that's a very common way to connect our display devices. Definitely a useful cable and a very common one to find not only at home, but also in our businesses. Cable C. This is another, I'd say this is an old cable, right? Not as old as our DB9 cable, but it's a lightning cable. Lightning cables were the ones that were well ahead of the curve when they came out because those horrible USB micro B and mini B connections were really awful. They were really awful. And when Apple came out with lightning cables, everybody was mad at the lightning cable. And then we realized, oh, these are really good. These are super good cables, and Apple kept them around really until recently. So that is one of those scenarios where it's a proprietary cable type, but it's really everywhere, and they are much more capable and much more functional than the older style micro B and mini B cables, which is why they became so popular. That's why Apple couldn't use the micro B and mini B. They just weren't good enough for the Apple hardware. Well, now, of course, things have changed. We have newer types of connectors, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but hopefully you called that a lightning cable. The D cable on our list, this is a cable you will probably only see in the middle inside of your computer connected to your storage drives, perhaps an older storage drive. You have the SATA cable. D is our SATA cable. The serial ATA connection, this is what you would plug into those older style cables that you have there. Keep in mind, of course, as we're going through these, just a reminder for you, those of you in the chat room, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I will be showing you these on the screen, so you'll be able to see what these answers are. Do not worry. These SATA cables are also, I could say these are kind of old cables too now, aren't they? We've almost so quickly moved over into the world of M.2 that we're quickly leaving SATA connections behind, except on our largest types of storage systems. For example, I still have I have a brand new NAS that I installed recently. It's only a few months old, all SATA connections, because you really don't have a way to do high-speed, large capacity M.2. So it's another one of those scenarios. SATA is what you would use inside of a desktop computer most commonly. If you're on a laptop, there is a SATA also for laptops, but it's a much smaller cable connection and not part of what we would use here for this. SATA is not any more reliable or unreliable than an M.2. It's just a different style of connector. Let's go to the other connections that we have. On E is a fiber optic connection. So definitely not something you would really find commonly at home. But actually in my home, I have one of these coming in from my internet service provider. We are connecting our homes in my neighborhood with fiber. And so they bring fiber right into my closet of my house over an SC connection and plug it into a fiber converter that converts it into copper Ethernet on my side. So that ONT, the optical network terminal that I have in my house, is doing that conversion process. It's really more of a CSU, isn't it? That's a little bit outside the scope of A+, but that's one that's really converting between this sort of interesting format that's over on the fiber side and converting it into the Ethernet format on the copper side. So this is something very commonly used on your switches, on your routers, and other types of infrastructure equipment. We don't commonly see the SC connectors being used on a desktop computer, for example. They're mostly on infrastructure devices like switches, routers, firewalls, and the like. Let's look at F. F looks a lot like the HDMI, doesn't it? It's very similar on it, but you'll notice on F that it's the edge of it's kind of cut off there, and that's because it is a DisplayPort connector. Like HDMI, it is sending audio and video across a link. Like HDMI, it is a digital connection, but it does support some higher speeds and higher throughputs. So for your higher end systems, especially if you have like a high-end graphics card at home, it may be connecting to your monitor over a DisplayPort connection. And if you're not using the DisplayPort connection, you may be limiting yourself if all you're using is HDMI. So have a look at your video card. Make sure that you're not limiting the capabilities of your video card. You want to absolutely make sure that you are using that DisplayPort connector if you happen to have a DisplayPort connection on your computer and on your monitor. So it'd be something interesting to look at to see if you might improve the video display on your system. Let's go to G. G should be very familiar. This is one we often use both in our office and our homes. Probably the most common cable on this list, or maybe second most common cable on this list, is the RJ45. The registered jack number 45. It's what we would commonly use for Ethernet. So Ethernet connections that are being used for your switches, for your routers, for your desktop computers, and whatever you're plugging in on Ethernet, whether it's 10 megabit, 100 megabit, gig, 10 gig, and higher, you will find RJ45 options for all of those. Very common, an RJ45 connection. And the last connection I saved, really the most common, for last. This one is absolutely a gimme. It's the USB-C connection. USB-C has effectively replaced DB9. To some degree, it has replaced HDMI and DisplayPort. To some degree, probably most degrees, it has replaced Lightning. But it has not replaced RJ45. It hasn't really replaced SATA. M.2 is basically the replacement for SATA. And since this is copper, it's not really going to replace a fiber connection. But indeed, you have that USB-C connection quickly and rapidly becoming the connection we just use for everything. And why wouldn't we? They finally got it right. It only took 20 years, but we finally got that connector right. It finally is working the way we would expect. Those are the connectors you should know. There are other connectors that you should certainly be familiar with for your exam. So make sure you go through not only the connectors that you see here, but make sure you look at the exam objectives to see what other type of connections you should be familiar with. Not only what type of connector it is, but as I mentioned before, make sure you know what you would use that connector for, how you would make that happen. So this should be pretty good when you work through some of those. So should be nice to have this. Some folks are thinking, this is a new question, but the question we did earlier was an old question. The first question of every study group is a review question. The first question of every study group is what we call our rewind question. You're finally in the new questions. So folks were thinking, did I turn into a repeat? Are we live? Yeah. Oh, we're totally live. I had to put a shirt on and everything. So yeah, we are live for this one. And having all of this happen in the study group. So thank you for asking, because I can imagine that's a little bit jarring if you happen to see things 2 weeks in a row. It's by design. Do not worry. We got you covered. How about a new question? How about a super new question. What a perfect time to bring that up. Thank you for asking, because here is our first new multiple choice question of the month. Our first new multiple choice question asks, a coworker has just asked the group chat if anyone knows where to find the loopback plug. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this question? Would it be connect two devices directly over Ethernet, reconnect wires to the punchdown block, locate the end of a long Ethernet run, perform router interface diagnostics, or capture network packets to an analyzer? Oh, there's a lot to think about on this one. The question again is one that you can answer. Please don't answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA. That is the room name that you will go to. We no longer use Socrative. That's old school. Modern Classics has been here for a while. We haven't done Socrative in like 2 years. So we are now on Vevox. It's all brand new. I can't keep well enough alone. I keep changing things around, Mod. I'm really sorry. This question again asks, a coworker has just asked the group chat if anyone knows where to find the loopback plug. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this question? Is that to connect two devices directly over Ethernet, reconnect wires to the punchdown block, locate the end of a long Ethernet run, perform router interface diagnostics, or capture network packets to an analyzer? If you'd like to lock in your answer, go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That will help you. There is if you go to Socrative, you won't see the question. If you go to vevox.app, that's what's on your screen right there. Where is it? Right there. Vevox.app. It may ask you for an ID number if you go through the Vevox website. If you just want to go really quick and bypass all of it, typing in things, simply go to professormesser.com/QA. It takes you to the same place. So just a little bit faster to get there if you're trying to answer some of these questions. I am so glad we got to a new question. You guys remember a lot. I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, and you remember the questions we did last month. You are spot on. You were ready for this. So people also, on that last question, our performance-based question of the month, people were asking about partial credit. CompTIA has said on their website, they have a frequently asked question for performance-based questions. And they have said in those frequently asked questions that on certain performance-based questions, it is possible for you to get partial credit. So I would like to think that that last question really lent itself towards partial credit. And I say you should get partial credit. So if I say it, yes, it's legit. Go get the partial credit. I think that's fine. And on your exam, you might get partial credit. The reality, of course, is you'll never know. They aren't going to tell you at the end of the exam, we gave you partial credit for this one. No, they never tell you how they grade it. So even though we think we might get partial credit, we think the question itself may lend itself towards partial credit, we will never know if they ever gave us partial credit. Just one of those things as we work it out. I know it's just an interesting part of the entire process. Speaking of process, let's answer this question. The question again asks, a coworker has just asked the group chat if anyone knows where to find the loopback plug. Where is it? Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this question? Is it to connect two devices directly over Ethernet, reconnect wires to the punchdown block, locate the end of a long Ethernet run, perform router interface diagnostics, or capture network packets to an analyzer? And for extra credit, if you can tell me what tool you would use for each one of these, then you're really doing well. And we will do that in just a moment. We'll step through all of these. In the meantime, let's find out what you answered. I will close the poll. And we'll see that 55% of you say the answer is to perform router interface diagnostics, but we're a little torn because 15% say that this is used to capture network packets to an analyzer. Another 15% of you say to locate the end of a long Ethernet run. We also have 9% that said we would use this loopback plug to connect two devices directly over Ethernet, and 6% said you would use this loopback plug to reconnect wires to the punch-down block. So in this particular case, 55%, the majority of you say the answer is to perform router interface diagnostics, and you got it absolutely correct. This is used to perform a or used in conjunction with router interface diagnostics. A loopback plug is something that we usually have sitting around somewhere. Usually these plugs are shipped with these devices, or we might have a pinout that we're using to create our own loopback plugs. It just depends on the type of connection that you're looping back. because you may be looping back Ethernet. You may be looping back a serial connection using that DB9 RS-232 connection we saw earlier. It might be a fiber connection. So you have different loopback plugs depending on the type of connection you're connecting to, the type of interface, and the media that is used for that interface. What this does is exactly what the name sounds like. When data goes out of an interface, this plug loops the data right back. You can see I created, here's a loopback plug. I have a couple of these that I made myself. This is one that simply takes the traffic, the signal on 2 pins, on 2 wires, and you can see it just loops it right back into a different set of pins on that same connector. So if you are trying to analyze if an interface on a router is working properly, you can put it into a diagnostic mode, plug in a loopback interface, a loopback plug, and it will send traffic out of that interface. And at the same time, it will interpret what is receiving from that interface. And as long as the loopback plug is sending, as long as the loopback plug is working properly, that interface should send and receive exactly the same data. Now, if it receives different data than what it has sent, it is very possible you either have a problem sending the data from that interface or receiving data on that interface. And that's why this is perfect for use as a router interface diagnostic. Keep in mind, however, this is not a crossover cable. This is not, you would never use the term crossover when you're referring to loopback. Those are two very different purposes, two different types of cables. They are wired differently, and they are used for very different purposes. For example, let's step through all of the answers we have here and see what tools we would use for this particular example. We know that performing router interface diagnostics is a loopback plug, so we have that one already. We have the answer there. The first answer we provided was connect 2 devices directly over Ethernet. For that type of cable, you would need a crossover cable. Crossover cables are used to directly connect 2 devices over Ethernet without requiring any type of switch, router, or any other type of device in the middle. Sometimes a crossover cable is not needed. Oftentimes it is not needed. And in fact, the most recent Ethernet standards for 25 gig and higher networks don't even allow loopback cables anymore. All of this is done on the inside of the system internally using auto MDICs. We do talk about that in our video as well. So this will be a crossover cable. Reconnect wires to the punchdown block. Well, you need a punchdown tool to be able to do that. It's almost like having a chisel and a hammer, but specifically designed for a punchdown block. Not that I've used a chisel and a hammer before, but sometimes you don't have a punchdown tool with you and you need to do whatever you can to get that wire back into the punchdown block. I would highly recommend you use a punchdown tool, and that's what you would use in this scenario as well. We also have the next answer on here was to locate the end of a long Ethernet run. Well, if you're going to use a tool for that, you're probably going to use an inductive probe and a tone generator. The tone generator will put a tone on one end of the cable, and you use, I have my inductive probe here somewhere. What did I do with it? Here it is. Hold on. I got it. Right here. I'm dropping stuff. Hold on. Hold on. I unplugged. Sorry, I unplugged my mic there. So we've got, right here, I've got my inductive probe that I can use to hunt down the ends of my cables. And this is what you would use in that scenario. This is one that also is a cable tester. There's a interface on the bottom you can plug in, and it will do a very simple continuity test to make sure pins 1 go to pin 1, pin 2 to pin 2. This is the inductive probe. The tone generator, well, it's down here somewhere. I don't know exactly where my tone generator is. It's probably on the other end of the cable, of course. I need to use the inductive probe. Now, if you could use the probe to find the generator, now we might have something, but unfortunately that doesn't help us very much. The last answer that we went through was to capture network packets to an analyzer. The network packets on the analyzer, we often hook into the network physically using a network tap. So that would be a tap in that scenario. In this case, though, somebody asked to find the loopback plug. They must be performing some type of router interface diagnostics, or the answer I didn't have here, they're probably just trying to find it so they could put it into some type of Ziploc or an envelope and put it onto the side of that device, because when you need it, you really need it. And the time when you need your loopback plug, you never find it. So if you're really good, you will physically attach it to that device. Put it on one of those zip ties that is just impossible to get rid of. Put it into an envelope, a plastic zip, and then a plastic bag, and then have it on the side and put it where people can't see it so they won't remove it. And then you'll have your loopback plug whenever you might need it. That's my little tip for those of you in the data center. We've all been there and dealing with that. So there's your answers for this multiple choice question. Hopefully you got to perform router interface diagnostics with your loopback plug. Let's do another question. Next on our list is this question that asks, a user has authenticated to a wireless network using their normal Microsoft domain credentials. Which of the following port numbers was likely involved in this process? Was it, here we go, was it 67, 22, 389, 143, 3389? Oh, there's a lot going on here right now, don't we? We got a lot happening. A user has, by the way, this is the style of port-based question that you could expect to find on your exam. They are not asking you protocols and ports. They're asking you, how do you use this on the network? A user has authenticated to a wireless network using their normal Microsoft domain credentials. Which of the following port numbers was most likely involved in this process? Is it 67, 22, 389, 143, 3389? Hike. We'll have to see which one of those it happens to be. I did pick some port numbers here where the answer should really jump out at us, but it's okay if it doesn't. We'll talk in a moment about why it's okay if it doesn't. But this is one that is I mentioned that the exams do not commonly simply ask us, here's a protocol, what port number is it? They often don't do that. They want to give you context. They want to give you a scenario, and then you have to take this technical training that you have in all of these different topics and apply it to the scenario. So hopefully you found that with this particular question. That was the idea behind the writing of the question. For those of you wondering what it is I think about when I'm writing these questions, that's what I think about when I'm doing this. And simple port numbers and protocols, it's almost a flashcard, not that useful. You really want to know when you would use these technologies and be able to break these down. Hopefully it's a familiar thing for you. A number of you are getting your answers in. You can answer at any time. Go to professormester.com/QA. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a user has authenticated to a wireless network using their normal Microsoft domain credentials. Which of the following port numbers was most likely involved in this process? Is it 67, 22, 389, 143, or 3389? What did you answer? Let's see. Oh, it's a rainbow, everybody. We don't know the answer to this one. We did not get a majority. The plurality of you answered, that'd be 32% of you, answered 389. 22% say it's 3389. 20% say the answer is 143. 14% say the answer is 22. And 11% say the answer is 67. Well, if we go with the plurality of you, then we got it right. The 32% of you that said port 389, what in the world is port 389? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. That way I can show you this that shows that TCP port 389 is commonly used by LDAP. LDAP is a lightweight directory access protocol. It is commonly used for authentication, but it's also used to directly access some of these directory services that are on your network. It's a very common and generic protocol that can be used to access almost any type of directory service. So although this particular question is talking about a Microsoft domain, you could have an LDAP database that has a different type of data inside of it. So that's another example of how different protocols can be used for different things. And this particular protocol, LDAP, can be used for a number of things. But it's so common to see LDAP being used in a authentication scenario, especially since Microsoft's active domain infrastructure does have a way to enable LDAP on top of it so that you can access that Active Directory database using anything that talks LDAP. So it doesn't have to be a Windows device logging in as a Windows user. you can access the Active Directory database using a firewall that is running in Linux, for example, as long as that firewall can talk using LDAP. See how that works? Very nice to have. In fact, I've set up a lot of different LDAP configurations from firewalls talking directly to Active Directory, and Windows was not involved in the process at all. So very, very easy. I've also used Kerberos. I've also used Radius. All of these are authentication protocols. So if you're someone who is trying to authenticate, you'll probably be using one of those. You're probably using native Active Directory with Kerberos. You might be using LDAP. You might be using Radius. You might be using TACACS. Those are the ones you would commonly find, and those are the ones that are on the A+ exam. This is a good one to think about for all of this. So absolutely, port 389. Now, the other ports that are on here are used for different things. Port 67 is a port that's commonly used when you first turn on your computer, because that's one of the protocols used by DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So to get your automatic IP address, you had port 67 and port 68 being sent over your network. If you're connecting to a device and over a terminal connection, it is a secure encrypted terminal connection, then you're probably using SSH or Secure Shell. And SSH uses TCP port 22 to be able to facilitate that connection. We also have port 143. If you're doing email, you may be doing some IMAP. Port 143 used for a lot of email communication. In this case, we're not doing email, we're authenticating. So that's not a protocol that we would use. And then port 3389, I have 389 and 3389. We're sort of mixed between those two. That is used for Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP. So anytime you're doing anything with RDP, then you're sending it most commonly over port 3389. This is only a few of the ports that you need to know for your exam, but it does give you an idea of how to apply some of these tasks, some of these applications that you would be using, and apply them back to a specific port number. You want to be sure to make those connections on your actual exam. Pretty important to focus on. And in this case, you got it absolutely right. If you want to find all the port numbers that are on your exam, I do have them as part of my video in my 220-1201 course. And that video is in section 2.1. The video name is Common Ports. Well, there's a lot of port numbers in this exam. There's a lot of other things in this exam, but hopefully you are very familiar with some of those port numbers. But of course, if you were to look at every video that is in my course, it's 137 videos. It's a lot of videos, over 19 hours of information. Now, I would love for everyone to watch all 137 of these videos. I realize that's not always something people are able to do. So what you might want to consider doing is going into the systems that you are using and seeing if you can maybe take some notes, watch of the videos that you're watching. But since you're not watching all the videos, you might be missing some information, but it's okay. I've taken all of the information from every video of everything that we are using, and I put them into one single document. These are my course notes. This is the PDF version of my course notes. It's got a full index, table of contents. Rather, you've got also a breakdown of every video in order with all of the text from those videos, all of the graphics from those videos, all of the information associated with, there's your port number list. There it is right there in the course notes, and a description of what all those port numbers are used for. Just exactly what the folks at CompTIA would like you to be able to use. These are not only available in this PDF version, which you can, of course, put on any device you happen to have. You can, of course, get a physical version of the course notes, which I have right here. There it is. So an actual book. But it's the same information, of course, that's what you saw before. In fact, there's the same pages with the port number list. There's the wireless frequency table. All this is in here. If you decide you want the physical edition, that's what we call this printed version. The physical edition is available, and I will ship it to you. I'll print it out and I will ship it to you. It's all printed on demand. So this version you are getting, the copy of the book you are getting, is the one that was specifically created for you. And you get free access to download the digital version immediately. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered to you, you can log into your member account on the Professor Messer website and download the PDF that goes along with it at no additional charge. That is on my website. You can find out more about the course notes at professormesser.com/1201 notes. another great way to help with your studies. It's also a great way to help support the things that we do here, and we thank you so much for that continued support. Let's keep going with more questions, shall we? Those of you that were asking earlier about Socrative links, as I mentioned, we haven't used Socrative in about 2 years. So you're only slightly behind with that. We're on Vevox now. So use the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to find the answers to all of these if you happen to be here live. This next question is one that asks, a user always upgrades their system by adding memory modules in pairs. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this upgrade process? Would it be for caching, ECC checks, multi-channel access, RAID support, or proxy? Which one is it? We'll have to see. The question again asks, a user always upgrades their system by adding memory modules in pairs. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this upgrade process? Would it be caching, ECC checks, multi-channel access, RAID support, or proxy? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Wow, it takes me back, people talking about Socrative. We haven't used that in so long. It's just very reminiscent of times previous in the study group. No, we've used Vevox now for a couple of years, and it works like a champ. It works, as it turns out, much more reliably than Socrative did. So that's why we are using it for that very reason. But I sure appreciate that you are old school and you go back that far with us. So thank you for joining us on the new one. It's always good to have that there. We'll have to figure out what the answers are. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA. A lot of people got their answers in quick on that one, which makes me wonder, is it a gimme? Did we get this one? Absolutely. Let's find out. The question again asks, a user always upgrades their system by adding memory modules in pairs. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this upgrade process? Is it caching, ECC checks, multi-channel access, RAID support, or proxy? We're going to stop the poll and see how you did with this one. We have a majority, 61% of you say the answer is multi-channel access, but a quarter of you, 25%, say the answer is RAID support. That's what you would have, this multiple memory modules in pairs. Then we're down to single digits all of a sudden. 8% say caching, 6% say ECC checks, and 1% say proxy. Nobody thought it was proxy in this case. Multi-channel access is what most people said, and that's probably because that's exactly why you would use pairs of memory instead of a single memory module at a time. It's not something that's completely obvious when you think about it. If you're buying memory modules, you could buy a single 16 megabyte or 16 gigabyte memory module. I went way back there for a moment. A 16 gig memory module, one of those, or should you buy two 8 gigabyte memory modules? It's the same amount of memory. Why wouldn't I just get a single module, make it easy, plug in the single module, and I'm good? Well, that's because our motherboards are designed, many of our motherboards are designed to be able to transfer information much faster than that. If it's a type of motherboard that only has a single channel, then it really doesn't matter how many modules you put in and how often. But many of our motherboards and the way that they operate are with multiple channels. So there might be more pathways in the physical motherboard itself that is able to transfer information from one of those modules at the same time as the other module, effectively doubling the overall capacity of this particular memory bus. Now, it doesn't exactly double the speed of your system, but it does significantly create a faster throughput between the CPU and the memory itself. And for those of you familiar with the inside of a computer and what's really going on, most of the communication in your system, all of the high-speed communication in your system is right here between the memory and the CPU. An incredible amount of data being sent back and forth over those connections. And the faster you can make that connection, the overall performance of your system will improve. So really nice to have that there. And that's why 2 memory modules are very often faster than 1. There are also memory modules and motherboards that can support triple channel, quad channel. So you need to look at the documentation for your motherboard. And if you have a system, you have a desktop computer or even a laptop computer, look at the manual for your system, see if it supports multi-channel memory. and then look to see if you have multiple channels that you can use. You might be able to add another memory module into your system and effectively double the throughput of your memory bus. That's something that would be very, very useful to use. Sometimes the motherboard itself even has different colors, so you know where to plug in the different modules. You plug in 2 modules on the black ports and another 2 modules on the red, for example. So that gives you a little bit of visual feedback for understanding that. This is really one of the easiest ways to improve the performance of your system is to simply optimize the memory inside of your computer. So it can be very, very useful to take advantage of multi-channel memory. And of course, that is the answer that we were looking for. We would not use multiple memory modules for RAID support. That is used for your memory, not for memory, but for your storage systems. RAID is a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks. Although these days, RAID is also more than just disks, isn't it? It's just a storage device when you're working through there. Hopefully that gives you some feel for understanding the difference between memory and storage, but that's why RAID support would not be one of the answers that we would be looking for. We would also not use that extra memory necessarily for caching. That's not the reason we're putting the memory there. Now, are we caching information as part of the normal use of our computer? Sure, but that's not why we added memory in pairs. So that would not be the answer that we were looking at in this case. We also have ECC checks. That's your error correcting code. That is memory that's able to identify and correct errors on the fly. That is not something that requires you to install memory in pairs either. You could install a single memory module, and as long as that memory is ECC memory and your motherboard supports ECC memory, it still would work just fine. And the lastly is proxy. We don't really have proxy as part of dual memory module installations. That's not what a proxy is used for. A proxy is often used to sit in between a connection, very often between you and a connection on the internet or inbound from the internet to your system. But that is not a reason that we would install multiple memory modules simultaneously. The best answer here, and really the only one that makes any sense, is multi-channel access. That is exactly what we would want to use. So hopefully that gives you a feel of things you can sort of work along those lines. For those of you that are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that email is you must follow these instructions. If you do not follow these instructions, you will not get your CEU email. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com. Click the link at the top or the bottom that says Contact Us. In the Contact Us section, you want to be able to put the link that you have for, it'll ask for your name, put your name. It'll ask you for your email, put your email. In the subject line, please put October 2025 Core 1, and you can even put A+ in there if you would like. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, multi-channel access, RAID support. It's a lot of words there, but you have to put all 4 of those words. Multi-channel access, RAID support are our super secret code words of the month. That is what we would use. So again, if you would like to earn that email, go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address, in the subject line, put October 2025 Core 1, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, multi-channel access, RAID support. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but eventually I will get it to you. I promise I will get you one there. Just takes me a while to collect them all, go through the process. I do have some automation there that makes it a little bit easier for me, but you will receive an email that has a funny attachment to it. That attachment is a PGP or GPG signature. It's a digital signature. So that means that if you verify that the signature is intact and valid, then you know that the email you received really came from me and that the email you received was not changed along the way. That's the benefit of making that happen. So hopefully that can help you as well. If you are going through this, that might also get you the CEU you need to renew. I realize a lot of people aren't collecting CEUs anymore. A lot of you are are simply taking the CertMaster CE, which is probably the easiest way to do it. That is exactly what you would use to make that happen. We do have some time for some more questions, so let's do another one. I have another question here that we could do. Let's do this one. A technician is installing an operating system onto a new cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, IaaS, hybrid, PaaS, or private? Whew, got a lot to choose from there, and I'm intentionally sort of saying them differently than what you would normally say them as. I don't know, to make it harder, maybe? Have that there? We'll figure out. The question again asks, a technician is installing an operating system onto a new cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, IaaS, hybrid, PaaS, or private? I feel like I should have capitalized that last S on IaaS. It's one of those where we're live, so here we are. It's not the way it works, but we have SaaS, IaaS, hybrid, PaaS, or private. We'll figure out what those happen to be. We'll see if we can make all of those happen. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer the question using that link. You don't need any special codes, any special IDs, but they are on the screen if you need them. You can, of course, find them all there. The CEU process, no, we did it twice. You can watch the replay, I guess, to go through the entire thing. Part of the CEU process is learning what to put in for the CEU process. So I don't want to give too much of it away. It is kind of a secret, sort of, unless you're here, which you are. So we can make that happen. Once we're done, as soon as I hit stop on this, you're able to go back and watch any part of the replay. So you can certainly do that and make it happen. Oh, we got lots to go through. Let's see how you did with this one. Maybe you guys know your cloud technologies and your cloud models really well. The question asks, a technician is installing an operating system onto a new cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, IaaS, hybrid, PaaS, or private? Let's close our poll and find out what the answer is. Ooh, we're a little torn. This is another one where we are a little mixed in the answers that we have available. 36% of you say the answer is IaaS. 31% of you say the answer is SaaS. 21% of you say the answer is PaaS. So the as a service type options for your infrastructure, your software, and your platform all came in numbers 1, 2, and 3. And then in fourth place with 7%, we have hybrid. And in last place with 5%, we have private. Well, if we go again with the plurality of you, 36% said infrastructure as a service. And indeed, it is infrastructure as a service. Sometimes you might see infrastructure as a service referred to as hardware as a service because you're effectively buying hardware and then you have to configure everything else. So very often you're the one who has to install the operating system. You're the one that has to install the application. You're the one that has to update the application. You're the one that has to do any coding of that application. You're in charge of everything in that. If you go to professormesser.com, for example, that is infrastructure as a service. It's a cloud service that I acquired. And I decided on the operating system I wanted to put on there. I loaded up the web server software for professormesser.com. I loaded up the other software that I use on that system to keep our backend processes running. And so I certainly take advantage of infrastructure as a service. Well, how do you know with your cloud provider if it fits into that category of IaaS or if it fits into a category of something else? Well, most cloud providers have what they call a responsibility matrix. I need one of these at home. A responsibility matrix lists out the responsibilities that you have to this system and the responsibilities the cloud provider has. Now, if you're building your own cloud service in your own data center, then you obviously would be managing everything from the information and data, the accounts, the applications, the operating systems, the network, the hosts, and everything else. That's pretty obvious. You bought your own computer, you put it into your own place, you're responsible 100%. Nobody else is going to help you with that. But let's say you go to a cloud provider And it's a software as a service model. In software as a service, you would be responsible for the data that you put into that software that providing. In fact, you'd be responsible for the device that you are using to put that information into the application. And you're probably creating accounts or creating a login so you can log into that cloud service. But pretty much everything else is the responsibility of the provider. This is a pretty nice setup. You probably are using software as a service. Well, in fact, we're using software as a service right now. Because when you put in your answer to this question, you put it into Vevox. Did you build Vevox? You did not. Did you install a server for Vevox? You did not. Did you write the code that creates the Vevox application? You did not. Are you responsible for upgrading the software on Vevox? You are not. All we do is log in, or we put a name into the system, and that's it. For Vevox on my side, I log in, I put in all these questions, and I sit here and wait for the day that we go live so that you can see these questions. So Vevox and the answers and questions that we have here is software as a service. But in this case, we were installing our own operating system into this computer. So far, if we look at platform as a service, now we're having to write our own applications, but we still aren't installing our own operating systems. We're still not having to provide our own physical device because the cloud provider is doing that for us. And then lastly, infrastructure as a service. You may or may not be allowed to install your own operating system, but for this particular cloud provider that gave me this particular responsibility matrix, they did require me to install my own operating system as infrastructure as a service, and I did, and that's why you're able to get to the Linux device that I've loaded Apache on that eventually gives you the website professormesser.com. So software as a service, not the answer. Platform as a service, not the answer. In this case, if you're installing your own operating system, you either have your own on-premises equipment, on-prem, or you have your operating system that you're installing as part of infrastructure as a service. And indeed, IaaS was the answer that we were looking for. You can find out more about these models and more in our video in section 4.2 under the video called Cloud Models. Cloud Models was what we were looking for. It's a lot there to be able to work through. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I want to get one more question in if that's okay with you. Platform as a service. People in the chat room are saying, well, where would you find platform as a service? There's a number of platform as a service providers on the internet. You will find a lot of them out there. One of the most popular, I think, one of the most well-known is PeopleSoft. That's a very popular platform as a service provider. They effectively give you all the building blocks and you sort of put the blocks together. So you're not programming from scratch, but you are sort of building an application based on the tools they give you on their site. Very often you are absolutely connecting and using developers to build that fundamental configuration, but that's sort of the way it works. When I say let's do another question, we are going to do another question, but this one's going to be a little bit different in its format because I'm going to grab a question from my new 220-1201 Core 1 A+ Practice Exams book. This is a big book, 387 pages. I wrote every single one of them myself. One of the things that if you ever get into this scenario where you are working and creating content for yourself, we like to say there's no AI in here. The AI was right here. This was not A, it was just I. It was It was my I that wrote this book. It's an important part of this because it's so hard to find good questions for this exam. I've been around the internet. I've looked at third-party questions out there. It's part of my job. It's what I do. And there's just not a lot of great stuff out there. Certainly not written with the most recent exam objectives in mind. I'm finding old content in a lot of places. And the questions themselves have not been written in the same style or tone as used on the actual exam. So I thought, let's fix that. Let's write a set of practice exams, 3 separate practice exams with 90 questions in each of them, performance-based questions, multiple choice-based questions, and let's write them so that they have a similar tone, a similar style as actual exam questions. Now, let's be clear. These are all original questions that I wrote. So none of this is on your exam. I have had people send me emails. Hey, I bought your practice questions. None of those questions showed up on the exam. No, you don't. That would be cheating. We don't do that. But they do have, other people have sent me notes and saying, I know they weren't on the exam, but I felt like the questions on the exam were very familiar to me. They had a similar style to them. And that was the goal, is they want to give you something that can make you more familiar with the process so that when you're sitting down for the exam, it's not jarring. You're not suddenly confused about how they're asking these questions of you. So that's a big important part of this. So I have for you today a practice exam from my practice exams book. Let's open up the book. Everybody open up your hymnals. This will be on page 10 of the practice exams book, A26 that we have here. This question asks, and again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This question asks, a system administrator is tripped over an Ethernet cable. That would be me. And the cable's RJ45 connector has broken. It's definitely me. Which of the following would be used to resolve this issue? Would it be a punch down tool, a tone generator and probe, a cable tester, or a crimper? We're going to see how well you were paying attention before, aren't we? Now, this is delivered to you as a PDF. So I think there is a lot to break down and be able to see as part of this. So because it's a PDF, I can annotate. I can write on the screen. I can highlight different things and think, I should probably write this. If I had a stylus, I could actually write on the PDF. It is not restricted. It doesn't prevent you from saving anything. It's an open PDF so that you can make these changes on the book that you bought. There's the whole point behind that is you being able to use this wherever you happen to be. A PDF is one of those formats that you can put on almost anything. So nice to have and available. Another thing that I thought would be nice, though, is that if you look at this, the answer, if you just want to know is it A, B, C, or D, you can go to page 31. We're on page 10 right now. So if you work with PDFs, do you just scroll? What if you wanted a detailed answer? That's on page 61. You have to go 50 pages ahead to find it. I guess 50 pages back. But since it is a PDF, you can click the button or the link where it says the details. Notice that my arrow that I have turns into a hand. It's a link. So if you click the word the details, voop, takes us to page 61. See what just happened there? Instantly, we jumped all the way there. It gives us the answer and tells us the answer here is D, crimper. And of course, I tell you why the right answer is right. The thing that I always got frustrated with when I was using practice exams myself is I got a lot of the questions wrong. That's sort of the nature of practice exams, isn't it? You're allowed to make mistakes now so that you don't make mistakes on your actual exam. But these exams that I was using didn't tell me why the wrong answer was wrong. And I felt like we were missing an opportunity to teach me something, to explain to me how I should be thinking about this topic. So in my practice exams book, every question not only tells you why the right answer is right, it tells you why every wrong answer is wrong. In some ways, I think that's probably more important than knowing why the right answer is right. Because if you got it right, you probably know why you got it right. But if you got it wrong, you don't know why you got it wrong. So this is a really good example of how you can go through this and not just learn what the question was about, but you could learn about things the question was not about. So for this question, you learned 4 different topics instead of one single topic. Plus you learned about the things you got wrong. So we were able to fix that or provide you with the information you needed to be able to get it correct next time. So useful. And if you don't understand anything about this, you don't even know what a punch down tool is, you've never heard of a cable tester, at the very bottom is a QR code and a hot link that will take you to the video itself that was used to create this question, because of course, every question in the book ties directly back to every specific exam objective that is on the exam. My practice exams book is where you'd have this. And then when you're done with this, let's say you want to go to the next question. Did you even know that your PDF reader had a back button? It does. Mine does, and many PDF readers do. So I'm going to click the back button, click, and we're back to where we started, just like that. So we don't have to scroll through the book. Don't do that. You're wasting your time. Just click the details, click the quick answer, and you'll be able to find everything that you're looking for in the practice exams book. You can buy the practice exams book for the core one by itself. You can also buy it with my course notes or buy it with the other practice exams book, and you get a bit of a discount because, of course, we don't just have a core 1 practice exams book. We also have a core 2 practice exams book for both of these exams. These are big books. It took a while to write these books. Absolutely something you should use. And it's written by somebody who is an actual real person. Instead of trying to use, have you ever tried to use something like AI for your practice exams? As many of you know, even the best AI engines are only 70 to 80% accurate. Is that something you should be using to study for an industry certification exam? Probably not. You're probably not going to pass if your only use is going to be going to a type of learning system that is inherently wrong. So AI is great for creating pictures of a dog on a boat, sipping a martini, but it doesn't help you very much if you're trying to study for an IT industry exam. You need materials that have been vetted by someone who knows what they're talking about, someone who's been working in the industry for a very long time, who's been in the trenches, who's been in the largest data centers in the world, who's implemented cybersecurity technologies for some of the biggest companies in the world. And that would be the book that I wrote. So hopefully that's something that might help you as you step through this. Your Core 1 practice exams can be found on my site. Go to professormesser.com/core1pe. Certainly good for that. Chat room's now talking to me about AI. We could have a great conversation about that. I've done so much work. But there is an AI section in the latest A+. You've probably seen it. It's right there. Last video of the course is about AI. And we talk about good things about AI because there are good things about AI. And there's also some bad things about AI. So we talk about both sides, and you can make the decision on how you would like to implement that and work through it. Don't forget also that one of your best overviews for learning this content, one of the best checklists that you can use for learning this information are the official exam objectives from CompTIA. If you don't have these, you will be shocked at how much information is available in here because everything you would ever need to know about every topic that would ever be asked of you on the exam is in here. So if you're ever wondering, and I get questions about this all the time, hey, is topic X on the exam? Should I study topic Y on the exam? What most people say is, I took a practice exam online and it asked me about this, except I don't see anything in your videos about that. I go, yeah, that's for the video. That's the series of exams that was 4 series ago. That was 15 years ago. They don't ask about that anymore. They ask about what's in this document. That is valuable information to be able to know what is in the document and how you would work with it. Let me show you on the screen. I've now zoomed up so close. That doesn't work very well. For example, in section 2, here's all the port numbers you need to know. There they are, all written out for you. You don't need to know, you don't need to go outside of this list. I've had people show up on my site with a list of 100 port numbers they're trying to memorize. And I tell them, we only need to know like 21 port numbers, 22. They're on this list right here. That's it. They go, that's it? That's all I need to know? It's the context. It's all about that reference, isn't it? We look at that list and go, oh, there's 21 that we need to learn. There's 22 port numbers I need to know. And the person who's trying to learn hundreds like, oh, that's great. Only 22? I'm fine with that. So everything is in here. And I will even say to you, if you know every one of these bullets, if you can go through every bullet and explain to yourself or someone else what this is, how it works, and where you would see it, and you've done that with every bullet in this list, you're ready to take your exam. Not only ready to take your exam, you're going to crush your exam. You will pass your exam easily if you know every single one of these bullets. There's no reason to go outside of this scope. There really isn't. This tells you everything you need to earn your A+ certification. Right here, there's one of these exam objective lists for the Core 1. There's another one for Core 2. It's on the CompTIA website, and it's free. What could be better than that? So that's another great place to go if you're trying to get that last bit of Q&A, that last bit of validation. Do you really know everything you need to know to pass your exam? Well, there you go. That is everything you need to know in that single document. Surprisingly, I have even seen people online, other online educators, tell me that, no, they go way outside the scope of this. They do not. Do not listen to them. They have no idea what's going on in this exam. Stick to this list. Be efficient with your studies. There's no reason to study things from 15 years ago, I promise you. Stick to the list of the objectives that came out in March, and you will be fine. You will pass your exam, earn your A+ certification, get that job in IT, and get a great career for you and your family. We do one of these study groups for A+. We do 2 of them every month. We've already scheduled the ones for November. Of course, if you are here this week, here we are on Tuesday the 7th. If you come back 2 days from now on the 9th, we're doing our Core 2 A+ study group. I have all new questions for the Core 2 exam. We'd love for you to show up then. If you can't make it to that one, come on back in November. I mentioned in the pre-show that our schedule for November little bit interesting, a little bit different. You'll notice not much happening at the beginning of the month, but boy, in the third week of the month, we've got on the 17th and the 19th of November is our Core 1 and Core 2 study groups for November. We've got our Network Plus on the 21st and our Security Plus on 25th, but we have Network Plus and Security Plus also for October. We haven't even done yet. So we're really looking way ahead on this one. November and the holiday season in general is kind of a trying time. So I've tried to work into my schedule and your schedule and Thanksgiving here in the US and other things into this. These dates can sometimes change. If they do change, you will see them reflected immediately on the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know what the latest calendar looks like, because that's what I update anytime I need to make a change to this calendar. Wow, are we done? Yeah, we're actually late. We did so many questions today. You guys were great with the questions. Thank you so much for being here, but we're not done yet. We have a whole after show. You can submit your questions for the after show at any time using that same link that we've been using all today, professormesser.com/QA. Also, if you're in the US, Canada, or a US territory, you might want to save a few bucks by buying the voucher on the Professor Messer website. I am an authorized CompTIA partner, and I have access to buy these vouchers and give you a little bit of a discount instead of you paying full price over on the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more. You can find that at professormesser.com/1201success. And of course, if you're on social media, we are too. Find us on your favorite social media site. Go to professormesser.com/Discord/X/Twitter. I still keep the old name there, /YouTube/Instagram. There might be new ones coming as well. We got a lot happening right now. We'd love to have you find us on social media. Simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of that social media site, and you have indeed found us. Well, that brings us to the end of the interactive Q&A part, where I ask you the questions. Now we do the interactive Q&A part where you ask me the questions. It's our after show coming up next. Stay exactly where you are. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, this is the time on Sprockets when I push buttons. Let's see if we can get some of this set up. It's time for the after show, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot of great questions. I love the first part of the live stream because I have all these new questions that I spent time creating. It takes a while to put all those questions together, but it's always fun to see how they're answered. It's always interesting to see how you're thinking about the questions. And you guys did great. You did fantastic. This is our after show. It's a more casual after show, which means I haven't prepared anything. There's no actual work being done. Don't tell anybody. I'm not really doing anything for this after show because you're doing all the work. That's right. You're the one who creates the after show. The way that you would have that work be created is you submit questions at any time using that link that we have been using, professormesser.com/QA. We've got a lot to go through. I'm going to sift through your questions. We're going to find things that you're interested in talking about, and we are going to talk about what they might entail. This might be questions about technology. It might be about career. It might be about certifications. It might be about the weather. I don't care. Ask any question you'd like. I'll be glad to consider it whenever I go through the list. Can't say I answer everything that's on the list, but I absolutely will go through the process of understanding what you need to know about these things. So we have a number of questions. In fact, there were some questions that came up. I think it was in the pre-show, wasn't it? I said, make sure you put that in the after show. And you absolutely did. Thank you for putting it in here so I would remember where this is and what we would do with this. Our first question today is a question that asks, if I can bring it up on my screen, it's always a challenge. There we go. What certification would you recommend to get first if you want to get into cybersecurity? This is a great question. It's a popular question. It's a question that I'm often posed with. And I mentioned earlier that I worked in a cybersecurity role as a senior systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. My responsibility was the design, planning, and implementation of next generation firewalls in some of the largest networks in the world. So these would be very big firewalls, big heavy firewalls, literally large heavy firewalls. And they would very commonly be put in pairs, multiple pairs often, to be able to do that. So hopefully that gives you some perspective for that and being able to understand it. I think this is also a place that a lot of people are interested in because security is a lot of fun. I loved working in that cybersecurity role, but it was not a role that you could jump into with no prior knowledge. There is an expectation. First, let's define a few items here. Cybersecurity is the first thing we should define because it is a very broad term that effectively means anything security related in the world of technology. Well, that's a pretty broad thing to talk about. But for the purposes of our conversation today, I'm going to define cybersecurity as IT security, information technology security. This would be the security roles associated with somebody in an IT department. So these are people that are responsible for protecting the data, protecting your applications, making sure that people can authenticate properly, making sure that people have access to the right kind of data. You're installing certificates. You are probably even managing certificate authorities. You might be setting up VPN connections, both end user and site-to-site VPNs. There's probably some type of reporting system via syslog and some type of SIM that you're using. And these days, there's usually an automation associated with that is going through all of your logs to try to find security issues. So cybersecurity, even in the world of IT security, is a very broad set of requirements. And not everybody in the world of IT security is doing every single one of those just because that's a lot. You imagine one person doing all of that? But when I would go to some of these companies that I would work with, if you pick any of the Fortune 100, I've spoken and met with a lot of those folks, and we've talked about how they handle security, things they do to monitor their systems, things they use to be able to report and identify security issues. And that's where I would come in, because there would be some places where they wanted more control or more visibility or more functionality, and that's what next-gen firewalls would normally give somebody in that scenario. But to get that job where I was understanding next-generation firewalls, I was designing implementations of these firewalls on very large networks, you can't just jump into that role. You need to be able to get into that role with some type of foundation so that you can understand and apply the security technologies that you're using. So I often will tell people one of the best pathways, one of the best strategies you can create if getting into IT security is where you want to be, is I would highly, highly, highly recommend you learn as much as you can about working with operating systems, not just Windows, but Windows Server. You want to be able to understand as much as you can about Linux. You want to be able to understand as much as you can about Mac OS, about being able to work with mobile operating systems, iOS and Android specifically, and perhaps to some degree, some of the Chrome OS stuff. Whatever happens to be popular for your particular environment, those are great operating systems to know. And you need to know more than just how do you install it and how do you log in. You need to understand how it's working underneath the hood, in the inner parts of the operating system. There are a lot of similarities between all of these operating systems. There are a lot of differences between all of these operating systems, and certainly similarities and differences when it comes to security. So being a system administrator, a server administrator, a Windows administrator, a Linux administrator, a mobile device administrator, those are roles that will position you very well for building your foundation. And that's a great place to start in the world of IT as well. Once you probably are starting at a help desk or a service desk. If you want to jump out of that help desk, being a desktop technician, an operating system technician or administrator, a server administrator, that is a great first or second job in IT. Not only do you need to know about working with operating systems, one of the huge parts of cybersecurity is networking. Being able to connect all of these systems together, and perhaps even more importantly, integrate the security technologies into the network without breaking anything. There's the hard part. We always hear about the security people breaking stuff. The security people are stopping us. They're holding us back. Well, they're not trying to. In fact, they want it to be as smooth as possible. They want the business to be able to work, but they also want all of your data to be safe. And if you think about the things that I mentioned in the role of an IT security professional, you have to be able, let's just take firewalls, because that's certainly in my wheelhouse. If you're implementing a new firewall into a network, are you going to connect it via layer 3? Is it going to connect via layer 1? In some cases, you even have firewalls that you can integrate at layer 2. Well, each one of those implementations has a number of advantages and disadvantages, and each one of those implementations requires a different type of integration into the existing switched or routed network. So you really have to be very, very familiar with switching, with routing, with dynamic routing technologies, with connectivity, with troubleshooting, with protocols, with protocol analysis, with understanding encrypted communication, with understanding certificates, with understanding all of those things that happen across the network. How else would you be able to design a firewall implementation if you have no knowledge of the network? That's not going to work for you. So make sure that you become as much of an expert as you have become in an operating system. You need to become that same expert on the network side. On my network side, I got into security because I became very, very familiar with things at a protocol level. I worked as a systems engineer for Network General. They were the company that created the sniffer product, the term that we generically often use to describe a protocol analyzer. And the reason it's got that generic name, it's actually a trademark name from NetScout now. NetScout now owns the sniffer. But that is a device that looks at things at the wire level and allows you to really see what's going on across the network. This opened up a whole new world for me because I just saw a cable, and then suddenly someone showed me this sniffer, and suddenly I could see what was on the cable. It's like an X-ray. It was like the ability to peek into the inner workings of the network and be explained what was happening on the screen in real time. A whole world opened. It's like looking into a microscope. Suddenly you realize, wow, there's a lot of stuff happening inside that little drop of water. It's exactly what happened to me when I started looking at the network. So I became very fascinated with networking, with connectivity, with switching, with routing, all of the things that make up protocols, how protocols work. When there's a problem, what happens with the protocols? How do they communicate? How does the encryption change things? How do different protocols work when they don't have any type of connectivity? There's a lot you can do at the protocol side. And once you become an expert in the operating systems, once you have spent time to become an expert on the network, you're now ready for your job in cybersecurity. And that, of course, has an entirely new set of things that you need to learn, all regarding security nomenclature, security technologies, policies, procedures, and everything else that you might find in our Security Plus course. For example, Security Plus course is a great primer for anyone who's looking to finally get into the world of IT security, because it gives you all of those terms and the knowledge you need to be able to understand what people are telling you when they talk to you about all these security issues that came up, especially if you're trying to differentiate between a buffer overflow and a cross-site issue, or maybe a SQL injection, or maybe it's some other type of issue. You need to know what those differences are and how to protect against all of them. And of course, be able to implement next generation firewalls, the intrusion prevention capability, the anti-malware, connectivity for site-to-site VPN, connectivity for end-user VPN, and everything else that surrounds that. There's quite a bit of technologies just on the security side. So that's why you often hear people say, you're not looking for an entry level into the world of technology as cybersecurity. You're looking for entry level cybersecurity once you've built the foundation. So create a strategy that gives you knowledge of the operating system, that includes knowledge of the network, and then you will be best positioned to get into the world of security analyst, security administrator. Those are the types of positions. Now, there are some entry-level positions in the world of IT that are security related, let's say. For example, if you work in a very large part of the country, a big municipality, a big city that you happen to be near, there are a lot of big companies that are stationed there. And a lot of those companies will have a security operations center, a SOC, SOC. The security operations center is one that is sort of like a help desk, but only for security. And like most help desks, you have people that answer the phone that triage the problems, but then they hand those problems off to the people that can solve them. Same thing happens in a SOC. You see alerts and alarms come in. You have calls coming in from people saying, I've got a virus on my computer or whatever it happens to be. And then you are responsible for finding the right people to solve that problem. That is a perfectly reasonable IT entry-level job that just so happens to have a security-centric aspect to it. And I think it'd be a great way to not only get your foot in the door in that organization, but also learn a lot about the security side. And that maybe you won't be able to jump into the world of security administrator right off, but you certainly will know how to best position yourself as you are learning about operating systems and as you are learning about networks. So I hope that 15 minutes of oration was not too much for answering that question, but I think it's an important one that a lot of people want answers to. And there's no easy button for IT security. You need to build the foundation. So start thinking about yourself, your personal path, the things you're most interested in, and see if you can come up with a strategy that gets you from where you are now to an IT security position in 3, 4, 5 years from now. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And along the way, you're going to be busy. You're going to be learning. You're going to be growing. You'll be getting better jobs. You'll be getting more money. You'll be getting more flexibility in these positions. You'll get more options. That's what all of this does. This is your gateway. The A+ Network Plus and Security Plus is the gateway into IT. That's the reason we promote these. It's the reason we tell people this is an exciting technology for you to work with, because it will help you as you get into that world. And you got to start somewhere. We all started somewhere. I started in this world of IT knowing nothing, but I had to start somewhere. My first really foray into computers, my first computer-related job was working as an operator in a supercomputer center at Florida State. We had one of the world's first ETA-10 supercomputers, which was cooled with liquid nitrogen. You know, in our personal computers, we have fans, cool air. Some of our personal computers, I have one that's cooled with liquid. So it cools it with coolant, effectively. Very similar to what you would have in a car. Air cooled, but there's a coolant that helps with the process. Well, for these supercomputers that got so hot, we used liquid nitrogen running through pipes to cool it down. And the liquid nitrogen would go into the back room into an enormous container called a cryogenerator. And the cryogenerator would refreeze the liquid nitrogen, bring it back down to temperature, and then store it. And then it would cycle through the system again. Remarkable, right? That's why I love this technology. It's just something new and different all the time to be able to work with. Thank you for that question. Let's see if we can find other questions that you might have along these lines. A lot of these are around the scope of all of the things that you are working with for security and security related. And if you're interested at all in security, I would really highly recommend you join us for the Security Plus study group, especially the last hour of the Security Plus study group, I think is a great place to go to be able to work through that. So hopefully you're familiar with some of the things that you would need to know for IT security. But if you're not, now's the time to learn. Now's the time to get into it and work through all of the things that will get you into that role. Now, let's keep going through the different questions you might have. If you would like to submit a question at any time, you can go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your questions, and I will be glad to look through those. Let's keep going through this list. This sort of piggybacks off that last question. So let's take it. This is from Judah, who asks, I just started my IT journey last week, and your material and videos have been so useful. Well, thank you so much. My question is, what piece of advice would you give someone just getting into this field? Oh, this is one I have to think about. There's not just one piece of advice, of course. You've already heard a lot of it in the last answer that I gave, especially as it relates to security. one of the things that I've always found to be consistent with IT as I've been working in this field for years is there's always a problem to solve. There's always a puzzle that you have to solve. If you're very good at solving puzzles, you will be very good in the world of IT. It very much lends itself to a logical process that takes you from problem to solution. And you have to have a lot of logical breakdowns throughout the way. Well, it could be this, this, or this. All right. But we also have this piece of evidence. Oh, then we can get rid of one of the things I thought it was. Then it's one of these three things. And then you find more evidence. Now you've got it down to two things. Then you try something else. Then you've really found the problem. But the only way to get from point A to point Z is to really have a logical path and a knowledge of how to go about that process. So if you're somebody who you really enjoy technology, you really enjoy solving puzzles and problems, and you have an interest in learning more about these technologies, it's perfect for you. Now, IT itself is interesting in its own right because it isn't just about puzzles, of course. You have an entire infrastructure of management, of people that are trying to solve financial problems and be able to work the financial side of it. There's project management. There's people working in data centers. There's people working with databases. There's the cloud-based systems. There's AI. There is networking. There's security. There's a lot of different aspects to information technology, which is the other great part of this, which is if you start in one part of technology, I started in the world of field service, where I was replacing a lot of motherboards, a lot of memory, a lot of storage drives, doing a lot of printer installations. Those are fun. Then you will become very interested in doing something else very quickly because you can only do so much of that. But there's an interest there. And maybe the interest is, I really like installing operating systems, or maybe your interest is, I really like installing motherboards. So maybe you go down a side of working with software, or maybe you work with hardware. But one of the universal truths of IT is that there's always an option for you. This isn't like spending years of your life in medical school where you are a podiatrist. You learn everything there is about the foot, about the toes, about the flats of your feet. You are a podiatrist. Now imagine a podiatrist that's doing this for 5 years, and then you think, I'm really more interested in the ear, nose, and throat. Well, you can't do that. You've already spent most of your life learning about this one thing. You can't just pivot over to something else, at least not very easily. It's going to be a much more involved process to pivot when you do that. But if you're in IT, pivoting is what we do because new technologies are coming down the line all the time. Back when I started in this world of IT, there was no cloud computing. There was no AI, at least not the type of AI that we refer to today. But there was still fundamentals that you needed to know. There was scripting, there was automation, there was servers, there's networking. Security became unto itself its own part of IT. And so people that had been very familiar with the operating systems, people that became very familiar with the network, it was very easy to pivot right into the world of security. And we see this happen all the time. So that's another great part about IT. In fact, it's a huge advantage I feel in working in this industry is that you don't ever have to become bored. You can always pivot into something that might be more interesting or something that might be newer because there might be a need to get more bodies learning about these newer technologies. We sort of see this now is that we had this growth of AI in the last year, but nobody to support it because it was so new. We all had to scramble to learn it. So this is a great place to go. IT is a great place to go. If you're worried about being left behind, you don't have to worry about that because you always will be learning the latest technologies. You have to. A lot of people also maybe don't realize that too, is they think you take these certifications, I'm done learning, no more learning. No, it doesn't work that way in IT. You will be learning all the time. It may not be for a certification, or it might be, but you will be constantly learning about these new technologies because you will have to be able to help support them, to be able to network them, and to be able to secure them. They're just going to be part of your world, whether you like it or not. They're just going to show up and you're going to have to take care of it because that's what you signed up for. That's what this job is about. And that's what I love. It's something different every single day. You will never find yourself repeating a day. There is no Groundhog Day in IT. Never, never, never. It is something different every day. When I was working as a systems engineer for that next-gen firewall company, I mentioned this earlier, talk about something new every day. You go in the morning to somebody's network and you plug in and you show them the security things that are on their security issues, some minor, some major, some illegal on people's networks that they had no idea was on there. We did find things on people's networks that were a violation of federal law. People went to jail because of the demonstrations I did on people's networks for I think for better. I was going to say for better or worse, but for better, because the things we found there were very bad. They're illegal for a reason. So there's your morning. That's what you did in the morning. Then maybe you took a customer to lunch. Then you went to another customer and plugged into their network where you got to see another broad set of security issues and things to be concerned about. Sometimes you plug into a network and it was very good. It's relatively boring. It wasn't hugely an issue. Nobody went to jail. It was a good network. And then in the afternoon, you plug into a network and it's a disaster. It is the things that were going on were significant in their security concerns. We see it all the time. But it's very interesting, the differences depending on where you go and what the networks are like, because generally when you're in a specific area, people tend to move from company to company within that geographic area, which I would think it would lend itself to having networks that were more homogeneous. They're very similar to each other in that particular area. Nope, not the case at all. The network you see in one place, you walk across the street and plug into the network in another place, completely different scenario. And I loved it. I thought that was great. It was a mystery every time you plugged in. And it was interesting every time you connected. So that's something that's the same whether you are working through operating systems, whether you're learning about the network, whether you're learning about the cloud, whether you're learning about security. It's the same scenario. It's interesting regardless to me. And if you're finding a particular set of technologies is not as interesting, very easy to pivot over to the fun stuff or what you think is the fun stuff. And that's one of the great benefits of this. So I think it's great that you've started your IT journey. I think it is a fabulous decision for yourself, for your family, for your career. And I also think it's a lot of fun and I think you'll enjoy it. And I think that's why, if no other reason, you now understand why we do what we do. There's a reason we create our A+ course. There's a reason we create this Network Plus, Security Plus, and there's a reason we make sure that all of that content is available for you for free. Because I think it is your entry level. It is the way to get into that very first job in IT. Once you're in the door, it's so much easier to move up from there. But getting that first job in IT is the hardest part. So how can we help you with that? That's why we exist. That's why we're here. It's why we're doing this live stream. So thank you very much for your question. Let's find some other questions you might have in this list. See what other things that you have there. Thanks for submitting these, by the way. Let's talk about certifications and why you would get certain certs and why you wouldn't get certain certs. And we'll start with this question from my good friend Anonymous. And Anonymous asks, "Hi, Professor. I reside in the Northern Virginia area, DC, Maryland, so the sort of the federal area of the United States. Got my A+ cert before 9/25." So you got it in there before the expiration date. Congratulations. Not everybody was able to get it on that final day, but you did it. So that's great. A+, check, got it. Anonymous continues, "I'm planning on getting my Security Plus. Can I go straight to Security Plus or do I need Network Plus first?" Well, from CompTIA's perspective, there's no formal prerequisite that is required to take any of these exams. So you could start with the CASP exam if you wanted. You could start with CISA Plus if you wanted. I don't know how viable that would be for many people, but you could, because there's nothing preventing you from taking that. There are certain certification exams in the industry that you cannot take until you meet the prerequisites, or certain certifications that you cannot hold until you meet the prerequisites. Not the case with CompTIA. CompTIA allows you to take any exam at any time, but they do give you hints. For example, I'll bring up some hints, shall we? Let's go back to the document I mentioned earlier, your exam objectives. The CompTIA exam objectives have a lot of information on them that can help you move in a direction. So what they say on their exam objectives for the A+ certification is they give you an idea of what you need to know. So they give you a breakdown at the top, the accreditation, the development of the exam, the authorized material use policy, how this exam should be used. But they tell you the test details, the exam, the number of questions, type of questions, length of test, and recommended experience. Not required, but this is recommended if you're going to be taking the A+ exam. So 12 months of hands-on experience in an IT support specialist job role. So that's what they recommend. And I would agree that if you had a years of hands-on experience in an IT support role, you would probably do very well on this exam without much work. You'll probably need to study up on the things you probably don't have direct access to, but a lot of the things you probably already know. Certainly helps, but it's not required. And I would say very few people taking their A+ have a full 12 months of hands-on experience in an IT support specialist job role. This is best possible recommendation. So this doesn't mean that you have to, but it sure would help if you had that. So that's useful to know, but it's not a requirement. Same thing for Security Plus. Security Plus has a different piece associated with it. I wonder if I have my Security Plus. Let's look at that one, shall we? I'm going to bring up, we're going to click through my very large storage drive here. We're going to go down to Security Plus. Where can I find that? It would be under my Security Plus section. Click. We're going to choose the exam objectives for the SY0701. That would be the latest version of the Security Plus exam. And I'm going to choose the latest exam objectives. These are the objectives for the 701. See, it looks very similar. See, here's the page for the A+. This one is, there we go, Security Plus. So for Security Plus, a similar setup for the test details. Their recommended experience for Security Plus, a minimum of 2 years of experience in IT administration with a focus on security, hands-on experience with technical information security, and a broad knowledge of security concepts. 2 years, but it's only a recommendation. It's not a requirement. And I will tell you, a large number of people taking their Network Plus exam have no experience in the industry at all. And if you go back to this question that was asked, I would have to bring this up from Anonymous. They're in the Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland area. They're in the part of our country that is very focused on the federal government. And because of that, Security Plus is a big requirement for many of the employers in that particular geography, in that Maryland, DC, Virginia area. And so if you were, and here's the answer to this question, by the way, can I go straight to Security Plus or do I need Network Plus first? The answer I will give you is the one I give whenever anybody asks, what is the next certification I should get? I don't know, because I don't live where you live. I don't know what's being hired where you live, and I don't know what companies in your area are looking for. That's not quite true with this question, though, is it? Because you said you're in Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland. It just so happens I know that the U.S. federal government has a huge emphasis in security, and a huge number of the jobs in that area would like Security Plus or better for an applicant. So in your particular case, Anonymous, I would say you are probably just fine and probably recommended to go Security Plus first. But whoever you are, wherever you happen to be, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you need to look at the job postings in your area for you to be able to answer this question with some type of knowledge. So one of the things I talk about, and I have a video, it's in the YouTube video description of this video, is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And it's a 30-minute video. It's a big video. But I try to go through every possible element that an employer might be interested in seeing from you. And I speak as a former IT manager who was hiring people. I was a hiring manager. So I went through a lot of resumes. I did a lot of conversations with people on interviews. And so one of the things I would recommend you do is look at the jobs that are posted. Are they asking for Security Plus? Are any of them asking for Network Plus? Or are they asking for something else? We might want to know that. And it depends on where you are in the world. It depends on the company you're talking to. There's a lot of variables there. So I can't tell you what the best answer is for you, but I can tell you, generally speaking, the industry likes to see people in entry-level positions that have an A+, a Network Plus, and or a Security Plus. Maybe not all three. Maybe they like to see all three. It depends on the company that's doing the hiring. But there are certain parts of the world, especially the ones that are in Northern Virginia, where you may find Security Plus, it comes up a lot more than any of those other certs. So the only way to confirm that, confirm or deny, is to look at the job postings that are in your area. So my answer to anyone who's trying to answer these questions about what cert do I do next? Everybody on the internet says I should do this. Everybody on this message board says I should do this. Those people aren't you. They don't live where you live. They don't work with the companies that are next to your place of living. You don't know what people are asking for in your geography. The people on the internet have no idea where you live. They don't know what the companies in your area are asking for. How could they possibly tell you what your best choice would be? They can't. Neither can I. But I can give you the structure, the guidelines, and what to look for so you can make that decision for yourself and make an educated decision that would be best for you, the best strategy for getting into all of those. So that's my recommendation as well, is I can't tell you. I don't know, but I know how you could find out. So hopefully that can give you some places to go with that. I get a lot of questions. A lot of the questions that I passed through in this list today are like that. Do I take A+ this and then security? Do I take Security Plus first? Maybe. Maybe you take A+ first. Or maybe you take Security Plus first. I don't know. You need to answer that question. You need to be the one that's able to break that down and figure out the details. So hopefully that's pretty useful, I think, for anyone who's looking to get into this industry. You have to do the research. You have to, in my video, I tell you to make a spreadsheet, document this thing, visually see it on your screen so that you can figure out where are we seeing mostly, what are people asking for? Are they asking for a certain thing? Or is there a certain number of technologies they'd like to see? Is there certain certifications they want you to have? Is there a certain formal education they're looking for? That's a great place to go. You have to be able to do that. This one is a super good question because you might not even recognize, you might not expect the answer that I'm going to give. This is Dragon. Dragon writes, when you were beginning your steps in IT, were you getting angry at your lack of knowledge? Like thinking about smacking your head on the desk when a simple task does not work? Like, what were your first steps like? Dragon, this is yesterday. This never ends. You have to be very good at rejection to work in IT because you will be constantly recognizing deficiencies in your knowledge because there's no way you can know everything. There's just absolutely no way to do that. In fact, one of the best things about technology, I think, is it allows people to be experts in a very narrow silo, and you start putting together all of these siloed people, and you suddenly have a huge set of knowledge, of expertise knowledge at your disposal, because anytime you need help, you can ask the expert in that. I'll give you an example of this. I've talked earlier about implementing next generation firewalls in these large companies. Well, as you can imagine, there are so many different types of technologies in use, of protocols in use, of dynamic routing functionality. Some companies are doing different dynamic routing technologies on the outside versus the inside. It's very common. So you have to have some type of route summarization between the two. It gets relatively complex. And we're not even talking about the security part at this point. We're just talking about the networking part of trying to connect things together through this box. And you're going to run into things that are outside the scope of your knowledge. I'm very good at the protocol level. I spent years of my career working at that protocol level. And then I came into a customer who was doing tons of BGP, very advanced types of BGP routing. Outside the scope of my particular, I'm pretty good at BGP. I can put together a BGP network, but their stuff was out there. And if you've ever worked in a BGP network, you know exactly the type of configurations I'm referring to. Way out there. Outside the scope of what I knew. This is something you will run into all the time, is you will have a lack of knowledge in a particular area. What you need to understand is everybody has that. It's not just you. We often think that we're stumbling through this with only half the knowledge that we really need to know how to do the job. No, nope, not true. You have exactly the right knowledge you need to be able to do this job. You just can't know everything. So along with your personal knowledge of things, you need friends that you work with who know more of you about things that you don't know about. Whether it's BGP, whether it's VPN technologies, whether it's routing protocols, whether it's whatever it is that you're working with. So when I ran into this really difficult BGP problem, I knew to call the engineer who works in a different part of the country doing what I do, but he came from a service provider that did tons of BGP, and he's our BGP guy. He knows everything there is to know about BGP. He's seen BGP at its best. He's seen BGP at its worst. He's implemented some of the most complex BGP implementations I've ever seen. That's who I'm calling. But you get very used to telling people, oh, I have no idea. You do not have a BGP expert on your hand. I'm just dangerous enough with BGP. Let's bring in the big guns. Let's bring in somebody who knows BGP back and forth. We'll get them on the phone. We'll get them on a conference. We'll get them on a Zoom. We'll do a call and talk about your implementation and see if this is something that we can do. And then he'll tell me how to do it and we're good. Will that work? So the more you find yourself, the more easily you find yourself admitting to people, I don't know, the better you will be in this industry. Because we all know no one person can know everything, but it's not about what you know or don't know. It's about, can you get that information? Well, I can absolutely get the information. You just need to be comfortable in telling people, I have no idea. I've told this story before, we would go to training classes all the time. If you ever get into one of these kind of high-end technology positions, especially with somebody, a manufacturer of these technologies, they will send you to training once, twice a year, and you'll go out to training for a week. Like the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you're in training. And you do that for a 5-day period, Monday through Friday. You get there on a Monday or Sunday. You get there Sunday. You're flying on a Sunday. You're there Monday. You leave Friday afternoon. You get back home. That entire process, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is training. It's hands-on. It's labs. It's lecture. It's you learning about the latest technologies. It's you learning about the latest functions of the product. It's you talking about difficult implementations and how you solve them. It's a great process to go through and learn the content you need to know. I would always go to these and I'd sit in the front row. First, I could see better in the front row. But secondly, I got a chance to ask the questions because I was in the front. And I got very good at raising my hand and go, oh, that thing you just said, you went A and then you jumped to C. I missed the B part in the middle. How did that work? And okay. And they'll go back through it again, kind of explain with A, you do this, and then it goes to B, like, oh, okay. And then you get to C. Got it. Write it down. Got it. Typed it out. Continue. Got it. Thank you so much for going over that again. And after we would get out of the training session, people would come up to me and go, "Oh, thank you for asking that question. I had no idea what he was doing." Like, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you just say, "I'm an idiot. I don't know"? Because people don't feel comfortable saying, "I don't know." But as I found in this industry, the more you will learn, the faster you will learn is when you start saying, "I don't know. I don't know." You need to own it. You need to own your ignorance of that particular topic. It does a couple of things for you. First, it lets other people know that we've got things that we need to learn to implement this. Everybody's sort of got a position set. They're not expecting you to work miracles, but you also are learning as you are reaching out to these third parties to help you understand these technologies. You're learning as you go from an expert. And next time those questions come up about BGP, I knew the answer because I'd already been through this process once. This happens all the time. As someone who represented a highly technical series of products throughout my career, working with Network Associates, Network General / McAfee, working with Palo Alto Networks, working with the different companies that I worked with for insurance and other things that I did in my career, there were constant issues of running into things that you didn't know what it was. Always. You were constantly doing it. It's not something that happens all the time. And in the position I mentioned to you that in the morning I talk to one customer, in the afternoon I talk to another one. Sometimes we talk to a customer at lunch. Sometimes we have a breakfast meeting. You could be meeting with 4 customers in a day. Every single one of those meetings, almost every single meeting I was in, a question would be posed to me that I did not have the answer to. In every meeting, you may be thinking, well, what good are you if you don't know the answer to everything? Well, nobody can know everything. And the customers know when you don't know, by the way. They can smell it. They know when you don't know the answer to that. So you might as well just fess up at the beginning and just say, yep, don't know that one, but I know who does. I'll get you the answer. I'll send you an email tomorrow. We'll know exactly what the answer will be for that. We'll go through that. So it's more about your personal process for following up and communicating. You'll notice one of the sections of the A+ exam, there's a whole section on communication. There's a reason for that. Ultimately, we think of IT as technology. We think of it as computers, as CPUs, as memory, as being able to work with these systems and make sure that they are communicating at a 1 and 0 level. The binary goes here. The subnetting of the network is there. The communication over the encrypted channel is here. We do that all the time. But what we don't do a very good job of is really understanding how to communicate with people about the technology. And I will tell you, the better you are at communicating with others, especially communicating at a technical level, if you're able to be, I sometimes think of it as being a translator. If you can translate between very technical topics and describe them in very easy ways that everyone can interpret properly, you will find yourself having more options in this industry. It frustrates me sometimes that people will look at technical folks as people who are not social and they live in a dark corner of the basement of the building and nobody goes down there and they're just typing on a keyboard. The technical people. These are the folks at the bar after training who have amazing stories about things that they've done outside the scope of technology. They're normal people just like all the rest of us. There's nothing unusual or derivative of technical people. They are just like the folks that are working in accounting. They're just like the folks that are working in technology, in transportation, in medicine. And we're all just folks. We're all just people. So if you are able to take these very technical things and break them down into a way that other people can understand, you will find you will have many more options available in your career as a technical person. It's sort of not expected there. You be more technical when you are less technical. It actually works that way. So if you were looking to take your career to the next level, start working on your communication skills. Start working on your presentation skills. Start working on how you would explain something in a very common and easy way to someone. And if you can do that, you'll be in super good shape. and being able to work through it. So hopefully that can give you some perspective on where you can approach these types of challenges, these types of problems. And it's one that has worked well for me through my career. It will absolutely work well for you as well. So work hard on the technical side, but also work hard on the communication side. You'll be surprised how much those interact and integrate between each other. Well, I think that's a good place, top of the hour, for us to finish up our study group of this particular month for our Core 1A+. We have another one of these in 2 days for the Core 2 exam for A+. We'd love it if you came back for that one. And of course, throughout the month, we have our Network Plus and our Security Plus. If you want to find out when our next live event is going to be, you can always go to our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Of course, we'll be over on our Discord after this, as we are all the time. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you so much for joining us for the study group. Thanks for joining us and participating in the first hour. Thank you for your questions in the second hour as well. We always have a good time. And we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.